The sound of cheap glass shattering against a concrete driveway is something you never forget. It is a sharp, jagged noise, but it was absolutely nothing compared to the sound of my sister's laughter right after it happened. My daughter, Lily, had just turned 7. She was wearing a little blue dress she picked out herself and a plastic birthday tiara I bought for her at Party City. She was so happy. She just wanted to stand next to her grandmother for a family picture. I can still see it in slow motion. The way Lily's knees hit the pavement. The way the little plastic tiara flew off her head, hit the ground, and snapped into 3 pieces. And then, Brittany, looking down at her, smoothing out her custom white silk engagement dress to make sure it was not wrinkled, and saying the words that burned a hole straight through my soul. She looked at my crying daughter, let out a short laugh, and said, "Trash does not belong in my picture-perfect moment." The worst part was not just the push or the horrible words, it was the absolute silence that followed. A backyard full of aunts, uncles, cousins, and my own mother, and nobody moved to help my little girl. They just watched. Some looked away, some took sips of their Chardonnay or craft beers. That was the exact moment I realized the family I was born into was never really mine. I did not scream. I did not cry. I picked up my daughter, walked out, and 12 hours later, I started dismantling my sister's entire life, piece by piece. If a story like this finds you tonight, you are not alone here. Leave a comment, tell me your story, and make sure to subscribe. In my family, there was a very clear, unspoken hierarchy. There was Brittany, who was delicate and needed things. And there was me, Harper, the invisible packhorse. My mother, Barbara, established this dynamic very early on. When I was 12, I walked to the dentist by myself for a tooth extraction, because my mother was too busy picking out a prom dress at Macy's for my older cousin. I sat alone in that dentist chair, held my own hand, and walked back to our suburban home with medical gaze stuffed in my mouth. A week later, Brittany, who was 7 at the time, scraped her knee on the driveway. My mother kept her out of elementary school for 3 days, bought her ice cream every afternoon, and told the entire subdivision how incredibly brave her little angel was being. They had a phrase for me: "Harper is so tough, she can handle anything." For 30 years, I thought that was a compliment. I did not realize it was just their way of saying I was free labor. Being the tough one meant I was the one absorbing the pain so they did not have to. It meant I was the one who paid my own way through the state university by working double shifts at an Olive Garden and a Barnes & Noble, while Brittany got a brand new Ford Mustang at 18 just for graduating high school with incredibly average grades. I built a life out of that forced independence. I became a certified public accountant and a forensic auditor. For over a decade, I have made a living tracking down hidden money in corporate America. I go after corporate embezzlers, uncover massive financial frauds, and find the ugly truths that desperate people try to bury in complicated Excel spreadsheets. I am very good at my job because numbers do not lie, and they do not play favorites. Numbers do not care who the golden child is. But the tragic irony of my life was that while I ruthlessly audited multi-million-dollar corporations in downtown Los Angeles, I was willfully blind to the massive, glaring deficit in my own family's emotional ledger. Every time Brittany crashed her car, my mother called me to handle the Geico insurance claims. Every time she maxed out a Nordstrom credit card on designer clothes, I was guilt-tripped into covering the minimum payment so her credit score would not completely tank. "You make so much money, Harper," my mother would say, her voice dripping with that familiar, manipulative sweetness. "Your sister is just finding her way in the world. Family helps family." I paid the toll over and over because I thought buying their peace meant buying their love. I thought if I was useful enough, maybe they would look at me the way they looked at her. But you cannot buy genuine affection from people who view you as an ATM. This year was supposed to be different. I promised myself I was going to draw a line in the sand. I was 34 years old, a single mom raising an incredible, perceptive little girl, and I wanted to break the toxic cycle. I did not want Lily growing up thinking she had to earn her space in the world by being quiet, small, and useful. I just wanted her to be celebrated for exactly who she was. But how do you rewrite 30 years of deeply ingrained history when the people around you violently refuse to read the new script? To fully understand what happened next, you need to understand the fantasy world my sister lived in. Brittany was 29. She was undeniably beautiful and deeply, violently insecure. She and her fiancé, Bradley, were a match made in a very shallow, artificial heaven. Bradley was 30, had a very expensive taste for custom Brooks Brothers suits, and was perpetually between startup tech ventures. That is just a polite, family-friendly way of saying he had not held a steady job in 2 full years. If you looked at their social media profiles, you would think they were young American royalty. There were perfectly filtered photos of weekend trips to Napa Valley vineyards, artisanal lattes, Louis Vuitton bags, and exclusive dinners. But I knew the reality. I knew because I was the one who caught the overflow of their terrible financial decisions. They were drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, floating their entire lifestyle on high-interest credit cards, and my mother's endless enabling. My mother, Barbara, was the chief architect of this illusion. She defended Brittany's spending habits with a ferocity that completely defied logic. To Barbara, Brittany simply had refined tastes, and Bradley was a misunderstood visionary. If I ever dared to suggest they needed a strict budget, I was immediately branded the jealous, bitter older sister who did not know how to enjoy life. There is one specific, crucial detail from the past you need to know because it is the loaded gun my family eventually pointed directly at my head. 5 years ago, my mother had a major health scare. She needed surgery, and her health insurance paperwork was a total disaster. In a total panic, she begged me to co-sign a legacy joint checking account at Bank of America. It was an old-school banking setup where both of our names and social security numbers were on the account. Its purpose was purely so I could easily transfer funds to cover her medical deductibles and manage her mortgage payments while she recovered. I put my name on it, funded it with my own savings, and managed it flawlessly until she was back on her feet. Once she was better, I stopped using it entirely. I told her we needed to close it immediately, but the bank required both of us to show up in person at a physical branch to sign the closing documents. Every time I brought it up, Barbara brushed me off with an excuse. "Oh, Harper, I am too tired this week. Let's just leave it. It is empty anyway, and it is good to have a family emergency fund just in case something happens. We have to trust each other." I let it go. It was a zero-balance account gathering dust in the banking system. As a forensic accountant, I should have known better than to leave a financial door unlocked in a house full of people who felt entitled to my money. But she was my mother, and despite everything they had done to me, a sick, hopeful part of me still wanted to believe she would not actively betray me. Fast forward to present day, Brittany and Bradley got engaged. The ring was massive, and the family group text was an endless, exhausting parade of Pinterest wedding inspiration boards, dress fittings, and venue links. I stayed quiet. I was busy working a heavy corporate fraud case, and I was focusing all my free energy on Lily. My daughter was turning 7, a huge milestone in her little world. I originally planned to take Lily to Disneyland, just the two of us. But my mother insisted we celebrate at her house. "Bring her over on Saturday afternoon," she said over the phone, her tone remarkably casual and light. "All the aunts, uncles, and cousins are coming over anyway. We will have a big family lunch, and it will be so good for Lily to be surrounded by everyone who loves her on her special day." I hesitated. I knew my mother's invitations always came with heavy strings attached, but Lily was sitting right there listening. Her eyes lit up at the thought of a big family party with all her cousins. She spent all Friday night drawing a beautiful, colorful card for her grandmother. She was so excited to show it off. So, against my better judgment and my screaming intuition, I agreed. I bought a beautiful, expensive gift for Lily, a massive customized art supply set she had been begging for, and I wrapped it in shiny silver paper with a big blue bow. I bought a pretty little vanilla cake from a high-end local bakery with her name written in bright blue frosting. We drove the 25 minutes to my mother's house in the suburbs, listening to pop music on the radio. My daughter was glowing in her new dress. I told myself it would be a good day. I told myself that just for one afternoon, my family could put their obsessions aside and celebrate this sweet little girl. I was wrong. I was so incredibly wrong. What was waiting for us at that house was not a birthday party at all. It was a stage set for my sister's endless vanity, and my daughter was about to be treated like an unwanted prop in someone else's movie. Do you know what it feels like to walk into a trap set by your own mother? We pulled into my mother's driveway, and the first thing that hit me was a deep, sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. The front porch was draped in elaborate, cascading white and gold floral arrangements. There was a vintage chalkboard sign by the front door that read, "In professional, looping calligraphy, Brittany and Bradley, the journey begins." There was not a single balloon, not a single mention of a 7th birthday anywhere. I unbuckled Lily, grabbed her silver-wrapped present and the bakery box, and walked inside. The living room was packed with relatives holding crystal flutes of champagne. The dining table had been completely cleared and replaced by a massive, tiered display of engagement photos, expensive catered hors d'oeuvres, and a huge floral centerpiece that must have cost a fortune. My mother spotted me from across the room and hurried over. She did not look at Lily. She did not say happy birthday. She stared directly at the shiny silver gift box in my hands, with an expression of pure panic. "Harper, you are here," she whispered rapidly, grabbing my elbow and pulling me toward the kitchen hallway, out of sight. "Listen, put that box in the laundry room or the trunk of your SUV or something, and put the cake in the garage fridge immediately." I stared at her, feeling my heart rate start to accelerate. "Mom, it is Lily's birthday. Where are we supposed to put her things? She wants to open her present." Barbara shushed me violently, looking around nervously to make sure none of the guests were watching. "Do not make a scene today, Harper. Brittany decided to do her official engagement photo shoot today because the weather is perfect and the expensive photographer was finally available. The theme is pastel and white. That shiny silver paper completely ruins the aesthetic of the room. We will do Lily's little cake thing after the photographer leaves and things settle down. Just be easy today, okay? Do not ruin your sister's big moment." My blood ran absolutely cold. She had hijacked my daughter's birthday to host an engagement photo shoot for my sister, and she expected me to just fall in line like a good little soldier. I looked down at Lily. She was clutching her handmade card for Grandma, staring at the room full of loud adults who were completely ignoring her existence. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice dangerously low, "you invited us here for a birthday party, and she is going to have one. Just wait your turn," Barbara hissed, her fake smile instantly pasted back on for a passing aunt. "Be strong, Harper. Do not be difficult. It is only a few hours." I swallowed the anger. It tasted like ash, but I did it for Lily because I did not want to start a screaming match and scare her on her birthday. I walked silently to the back room. I hid the silver present in a dark closet and shoved the custom cake behind a carton of milk in the fridge. When I came back out, Brittany was holding court in the exact center of the room. She was wearing a custom-made silk dress, laughing loudly, flashing her diamond ring for the older aunts. Bradley was standing next to her, looking incredibly smug and holding a bourbon on the rocks. Brittany noticed me and gave a little dismissive wave. "Oh, hey Harper, glad you could make it to our special day." She did not even look at my daughter. For the next 2 excruciating hours, Lily and I sat in a corner of the living room. I fed her little catered cucumber sandwiches and told her funny stories to distract her. She kept asking when she could give her card to Grandma. I kept saying, "Soon, honey, soon." I watched my family raise their glasses to toast my sister. I watched them hand over thick white envelopes stuffed with cash. I watched them celebrate a couple I knew for a fact was drowning in terrible debt, while my kind, smart, 7-year-old daughter sat completely ignored on a dining chair. Then the professional photographer arrived. He was a loud, high-energy guy who immediately started directing people toward the backyard. "All right, everyone, the lighting is perfect right now out on the patio. Let us get a massive family portrait to commemorate the happy couple." The crowd eagerly shuffled outside. The patio was beautifully decorated with a huge floral arch. My mother was running around frantically, placing people according to height and outfits. "Aunt Susan, over here. Uncle Gary, stand behind Bradley." I stayed near the back edge of the yard, holding Lily's hand tightly. I fully intended to stay entirely out of the way. But Lily, with the innocent, pure heart of a child, thought the family portrait included her too. She saw her grandmother standing near the center, smiling brightly. Lily let go of my hand, smiled a massive, toothless grin, adjusted her little blue dress, fixed her plastic birthday tiara, and started eagerly jogging toward the middle of the group to stand right next to Barbara. "Grandma, I want to be in the picture too," she said happily. What happened next took maybe 3 seconds, but it is permanently burned into my brain, a scar that will never fully heal. Have you ever seen someone look at a child with pure, unfiltered disgust? For one terrifying second, the entire backyard went dead silent. The only sound was the photographer nervously clearing his throat and lowering his camera. Lily sat on the hard patio pavers, staring at her scraped knee. Her bottom lip was trembling violently as the shock set in. She looked up at her aunt, her big brown eyes filling with thick tears, waiting for an apology, waiting for someone to reach down and help her up. Brittany did not apologize. She did not even flinch or look guilty. She stared at the broken pieces of the plastic tiara scattered across the concrete, smoothed the front of her expensive silk dress, and let out a short, harsh, mocking laugh. "Trash does not belong in my picture-perfect moment," Brittany said. her voice loud and clear enough for every single person in the yard to hear. "Someone get her out of the frame right now. She is ruining the lighting." I waited for the reaction. I waited for my mother to gasp in horror, for an aunt to step forward and scold her, for Bradley to tell his fiancée she crossed a line. I waited for the village that is supposed to protect a child to step up and do the right thing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Uncle Gary looked down at his expensive leather shoes. Aunt Susan took a long sip of her champagne and looked up at the sky. My mother, Barbara, the woman who raised me, stepped forward and sighed with deep annoyance. "Harper, please," Barbara muttered, waving her hand at me dismissively, not even looking at her crying granddaughter. "Take her inside right now. Brittany's dress is going to wrinkle if we have to reset the pose. Just go." My family's silence was a physical blow to the chest. It was the final, undeniable confirmation of everything I had suspected for 30 long years. To them, we were not people. We were not family. We were just inconveniences blocking their perfect lighting. I did not scream. I did not throw a champagne flute through a window. In my line of work, you learn very quickly that losing your temper means losing your power entirely. When you find the smoking gun in a massive financial audit, you do not yell at the suspect. You quietly pack your briefcase, build the bulletproof case, and let the federal authorities deliver the strike. I walked over to my daughter. I knelt on the cold stone and gently scooped her up into my arms. I wiped a stray tear from her cheek with my thumb and kissed her forehead. I stood up, holding her tightly against my chest. I looked directly at Brittany. Her smug, victorious smile faltered just a tiny fraction when she finally met my eyes, because there was no pain or sadness in my expression anymore, only absolute, terrifying coldness. I looked at my mother, who actively refused to make eye contact with me. I did not say a single word. I turned my back on the floral arch, the expensive champagne, and the people who shared my DNA. I walked out the side gate, straight down the driveway, and buckled Lily into her car seat. I walked back into the house just long enough to grab her silver-wrapped present from the dark closet and the cake from behind the milk in the fridge, walking right past a cousin who awkwardly tried to offer me a paper napkin. I got into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away. That was the last time I ever acted like the good, obedient daughter. The tough one was officially dead. The forensic accountant was driving the car now, and the forensic accountant does not forgive. She investigates. What would you do if your family treated your child like trash? The drive from my mother's house to our apartment takes exactly 25 minutes. For the first 15 minutes, the inside of the SUV was incredibly heavy with silence. I kept my eyes locked firmly on the road, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned completely white, trying to process the pure cruelty of what had just happened on that patio. Then, from the back seat, a small, fragile, broken voice shattered the silence. "Mommy." I looked in the rearview mirror. Lily was clutching the torn strap of her blue dress, her eyes red and puffy from crying quietly. "Yes, honey, I am right here." "Am I trash?" she asked. Her voice cracked on the last word, and a fresh tear rolled down her cheek. "Is that why Grandma did not want my picture?" I felt like someone had shoved a jagged knife between my ribs and twisted it. The generational trauma, the decades of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family, had just been passed down directly to my innocent 7-year-old daughter. I pulled over onto the shoulder of the highway. I immediately put the car in park, unbuckled my seatbelt, and climbed into the back seat to sit right next to her. I took her little hands in mine and looked straight into her beautiful brown eyes. "Listen to me, Lily. You are the most valuable, precious, and beautiful person in my entire world. What your aunt said, and what those people did back there, is because they are broken inside. They are empty, and they try to make other people feel small so they can feel big. You are not trash. You are a treasure. And I promise you on my life, I will never let anyone treat you like that ever again." She sobbed and buried her face in my shoulder. We sat there on the side of the road until her breathing calmed down and she stopped crying. I drove us to a fancy, brightly lit bakery in downtown Los Angeles. We threw away the plain vanilla cake I bought earlier. I told Lily she could pick out the biggest, most ridiculous cake in the entire display case. She chose a massive triple-layer chocolate cake covered in bright rainbow sprinkles. When we got home, we put on her favorite Pixar movie. We opened her silver present full of art supplies, and we ate massive slices of chocolate cake sitting on the living room floor. I made absolutely sure she went to sleep that night, knowing she was deeply, fiercely loved and protected. Once she was fast asleep, the adrenaline finally faded, leaving behind a cold, hard, dangerous clarity. I sat at my kitchen island in the dark, staring at the wall, thinking about boundaries and consequences. I was done. I was going to block their phone numbers tomorrow morning and walk away forever. That was the plan. Just completely disappear from their lives. But at exactly 11:45 that night, my phone buzzed violently on the granite counter. It was not a text message from my mother. It was not a fake apology from Brittany. It was an automated security alert from a premium credit monitoring app, one I used for my professional accounting work. The bright notification lit up the dark kitchen, casting a harsh glare on the counters. Alert. A hard inquiry has been recorded on your credit profile. Source: the Heritage Country Club and Event Management. I stared at the screen, my eyes narrowing. The exhaustion instantly vanished, replaced by a surge of pure, focused energy. The Heritage Country Club is the most exclusive, ridiculously expensive wedding venue in Orange County, California. It is a sprawling historic estate with imported crystal chandeliers, manicured gardens, and a waitlist at least a year long. It is exactly the kind of pretentious place Brittany would kill to get married at. But why on earth would a luxury wedding venue be doing a hard credit check on my personal social security number at midnight? A normal person might think it was a system glitch, or maybe just a weird coincidence, but I am an auditor. I track financial anomalies for a living. I know exactly what a hard inquiry means. A hard inquiry means someone just applied for a massive line of credit, or authorized a massive payment plan using my personal identity. The dead coldness inside me transformed into something sharp, calculated, and incredibly dangerous. My immediate family had pushed my daughter to the ground for a photo. Now it looked like they were digging their greedy hands into my financial identity. Are intuition and a laptop enough to uncover a massive family secret? When you investigate severe financial fraud, you start with the widest net possible. You look for the threads that do not belong in the fabric, the numbers that disrupt the pattern. I logged into my highly secure work terminal from my laptop and pulled my full credit report from all 3 major credit bureaus. I meticulously cross-referenced it with my active bank accounts. Everything looked perfectly normal at first glance. My main checking account was fine. My personal credit cards had their usual manageable balances. Then, like a ghost coming out of the fog, I remembered the joint account, the legacy joint checking account my mother begged me to keep open 5 years ago. The one I had completely ignored because the balance was 0, and it was too bureaucratically annoying to drag my mother into a physical branch to sign the closing papers. I quickly navigated to the bank's online portal, typed in my credentials, and pulled the transaction history for that specific joint account. The screen loaded. The numbers stared back at me in stark black and white. I felt the air completely leave my lungs. 3 weeks ago, an inbound wire transfer of $12,000 had hit the account. It came from a third-party lending service, essentially a fast approval, high-interest personal loan company. That was bad enough. But it was the transaction that happened exactly 2 days later that made my blood run cold. Outbound wire transfer, $12,000. Merchant, Heritage Country Club Event Management. Reference, Brittany Wedding Deposit, $12,000, charged directly to an account with my name as the primary account holder. I leaned back in my chair, the silence of my apartment suddenly deafening. They did not just borrow money. They took out a high-interest predatory loan under the umbrella of my joint account to pay the deposit for a luxury wedding venue. Because it was a legacy joint account, my mother had legal access to initiate transfers, but she did not have the income to qualify for a $12,000 loan on her own. They used the account's history, heavily tied to my excellent credit score, to get approval, and then immediately wired the money out before I noticed. But a luxury venue like the Heritage does not accept a random wire transfer without a signed, legally binding contract on file. They require a financially responsible party. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I opened my personal email account. Not my secure work email, but the old personal one I rarely check because it is full of marketing spam. I went to the search bar and typed Heritage Country Club. The search returned exactly 2 results. Both were hidden in my spam folder. I clicked the first email dated 3 weeks ago. It was an automated message from the venue's secure document signing service. Subject: Welcome to the Heritage. Your event contract is complete. I opened the attached PDF document. It was a massive 50-page venue rental agreement detailing catering costs, floral arrangements, and security deposits. The total cost of the wedding was estimated at an absurd $45,000. The required non-refundable deposit was exactly $12,000. I scrolled rapidly to the very last page, to the signature block. Under the line boldly labeled Financially Responsible Party, Guarantor, was my full legal name, Harper Davis. And right next to it, stamped with an IP address and a timestamp, was a digital signature. It was an electronic scribble that vaguely resembled my actual handwriting, applied using my social security number as verification. I had never seen this document in my life. I had never spoken to anyone at the Heritage Country Club. I had never agreed to host, plan, or pay for a single napkin at this wedding. My sister and my mother had forged my signature on a legally binding contract to secure a luxury wedding venue using an old banking loophole to wire the deposit without triggering my daily alerts. They had treated my identity as a communal family asset. They thought I was so busy, so distant, and so completely trained by 30 years of emotional abuse to simply absorb the blow that, even if I eventually found out, I would just sigh, write a check, and pay it off to keep the peace. They thought the tough one would just take it. I stared at the forged signature glowing on the screen. The image of Brittany pushing Lily flashed violently in my mind. Trash does not belong in my picture-perfect moment. They wanted a picture-perfect moment. They wanted a $45,000 luxury wedding funded by blatant fraud and identity theft. I reached for my phone on the counter. I did not call my mother. I did not call my sister to scream and demand answers. I opened my contacts list and found the 2 4-hour priority fraud hotline for my bank. They thought I was a pushover. They forgot I was a hunter, and open season had just officially started. If you are enjoying the story so far and are ready to see this family get exactly what they deserve, drop a comment below saying, "I am in." This is our secret code for the real ones who made it this far. I will heart and reply to every comment with, "I am in." Now let us get back to the reckoning. When you find one roach in a dark kitchen, you know there is an entire nest hiding in the walls. I did not stop my investigation with the country club contract. That was just the surface level of the fraud. I poured myself another cup of coffee. I sat right back down at my kitchen island and cast my forensic net wider over my entire financial existence. I was looking for any anomaly, any slight discrepancy in my credit history over the last 6 months. It did not take long to find the next bleeding wound. Buried deep in the secondary pages of my credit report, underneath my actual, legitimate credit cards, was a brand new revolving credit line. It was opened less than 4 weeks ago. It was a premium department store credit card, the kind that carries an astronomical interest rate if you do not pay the balance in full every 30 days. The account was completely maxed out. The balance flashing in red numbers on my screen was $8,000. My heart hammered against my ribs. $8,000. I tracked down the merchant ID code. It led directly to a high-end luxury boutique located on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. I pulled the itemized billing statement through a backdoor verification process I use for audits. There was only one purchase listed on the entire statement. It was a luxury men's Rolex watch. The pieces snapped together with sickening clarity. Brittany had not just stolen my identity to secure her dream wedding venue. She had actively opened a fraudulent credit card in my name to buy an $8,000 Rolex as an engagement gift for Bradley. She wanted to present him with a massive, flashy symbol of her love. And she wanted me to foot the bill without my knowledge. My sister was building an entire empire of illusions, and she was using my stolen financial foundation to prop it up. The sheer entitlement was breathtaking. It was a masterclass in narcissistic family drama. But as a forensic accountant, I know that uncovering the theft is only half the job. You have to prove exactly how they executed it. I needed the digital fingerprints. I submitted a rapid fraud verification request to the retail bank that issued the credit card. Because it was my social security number, I had the legal right to request the metadata attached to the original online application. I wanted to see the digital footprints the thief left behind when they hit the submit button. An hour later, the automated report hit my secure inbox. I opened the file and scrolled down to the IP address recorded at the exact moment the application was approved. I ran a standard geolocation trace on that specific IP address. The result popped up on the screen, and the last shred of hope I had for my family shattered into a million pieces. The IP address did not belong to Brittany's apartment. It did not belong to Bradley's phone. The IP address was registered to the Comcast Internet Service account at my mother's house. It was the exact same Wi-Fi network my mother used to send her daily morning text messages. My mother was not just turning a blind eye. She was not just aggressively defending my sister's bad habits. My mother had actively sat down at her desktop computer, typed in my social security number, my date of birth, and my mother's maiden name, and helped her favorite daughter steal $8,000 from me. She was a direct accomplice to massive financial deception and the theft of my identity. I closed my laptop very slowly. The betrayal was so deep, so profound, it physically ached in my bones. My mother had looked me in the eye today at that party. She had ordered me to hide my daughter's birthday present. She had watched my daughter get pushed onto the concrete, and she did all of that, knowing she had recently helped steal a combined $20,000 in credit under my name. They truly believed I was a bottomless resource, a machine that existed solely to fund their toxic, perfect family narrative. They thought they could humiliate my daughter and steal my future on the exact same day. I looked over into the living room. Lily was fast asleep on the couch, surrounded by her new art supplies, a little smudge of chocolate frosting still on her cheek. My mother chose her golden child. Now I was choosing mine, and I was about to unleash a financial firestorm they would never recover from. How do you burn down a toxic family without lighting a single match? Monday morning arrived. I did not drop Lily off at school. I called in sick for her. I made her a huge stack of pancakes and set her up with her new art supplies at the kitchen table. I needed her where I could see her. I needed to know she was safe while I went to war. At exactly 8:00 a.m., I picked up my phone and dialed my primary bank's priority fraud division. I did not sound angry. I did not sound like a victim. I sounded exactly like a forensic accountant reporting a confirmed, documented crime. My name is Harper Davis, I told the agent calmly. I am reporting a confirmed case of aggravated identity theft and wire fraud. A $12,000 loan was initiated fraudulently through a legacy joint account, and an $8,000 retail credit account was opened using my social security number without my consent. I have the IP logs and the forged digital signatures. The agent's tone instantly shifted from polite customer service to serious compliance mode. Understood, Miss Davis. We take this extremely seriously. What are your immediate directives? I want a complete freeze on the joint account. I want a hard fraud alert placed on my social security number across all 3 bureaus. And I am officially initiating a clawback protocol on the $12,000 wire transfer to the Heritage Country Club, as well as disputing the retail charge for the watch as fraudulent. Initiating clawback now, the agent confirmed, the sound of rapid typing echoing through the phone. The funds transferred to the Heritage will be legally frozen and pulled back to the bank while the fraud is investigated. The retail card will be locked and flagged for criminal review. This process is irreversible once initiated. Do it, I said, my voice as cold as ice. The trap was officially set. The money they thought they had secured was evaporating into thin air, but I needed to make sure the venue knew exactly why the money was disappearing. I did not want my family spinning a lie about a banking error. I wanted the truth on the record. I looked up the number for the Heritage Country Club and asked to speak directly to the lead event manager. A woman named Vanessa answered the phone. She had a crisp, no-nonsense voice, the kind of voice that manages million-dollar events and does not tolerate nonsense. This is Vanessa. How can I help you? My name is Harper Davis, I said. I believe you have a wedding contract on file for a Brittany and Bradley. You received a $12,000 wire deposit for it 3 weeks ago. Ah, yes, the spring floral wedding, Vanessa said, her tone softening slightly. Is there an issue with the catering choices, Miss Davis? Is there a problem with the contract? I responded with deadpan evenness. I never signed it. My sister forged my signature and used stolen funds to pay your deposit. My bank's fraud department just initiated a legal clawback. That $12,000 will be pulled from your accounts by the end of the business day. I strongly advise you to secure your financial position regarding that event. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. I could practically hear Vanessa processing the liability. Miss Davis, that is a very serious accusation, Vanessa finally said, her voice dropping an octave. We require rigorous identification for our guarantor contracts. Check the digital signature log, I countered immediately. The IP address will not match. Check the billing address. It goes to my mother's house, not mine. I heard clicks on her end, a sharp intake of breath. Then Vanessa hesitated. Miss Davis, there is a private client note attached to your guarantor profile in our system. It was added by the bride, Brittany, during the initial booking phase. I am not supposed to read this out loud, but under the circumstances, read it, I demanded. Vanessa cleared her throat. The note says, Please be advised that my older sister Harper is the financial guarantor, but she suffers from severe mental breakdowns and frequent psychotic episodes. If she calls attempting to cancel the venue or claiming she did not sign the contract, Please ignore her completely. It is just one of her episodes. We are managing her care. The sheer, breathtaking evil of that left me speechless for a second. Brittany had not just stolen my money. She had actively tried to strip me of my credibility, weaponizing a fake severe mental illness to preemptively silence me if I ever discovered the fraud. She had built a firewall of lies to protect her stolen picture-perfect moment. I am a licensed, certified public accountant, I said, my voice vibrating with a rage so pure it felt like electricity. I do not have schizophrenia. I have a family of criminals. I am sending you the official bank fraud claim number right now. Cancel the contract, Vanessa. Consider it done, Vanessa said, her voice completely drained of any remaining warmth for the bride. We do not do business with frauds. I hung up the phone. The pieces were moving. The avalanche had started, and my family had absolutely no idea it was heading directly toward them. How long does it take for a stolen empire to completely collapse? The absolute chaos began exactly 24 hours later. By Tuesday morning, the bank's legal clawback had successfully hit the venue's accounts. The $12,000 was ripped back. The Heritage, operating under Vanessa's strict orders, immediately froze the wedding reservation and sent an automated cancellation warning to Brittany's email. My phone started blowing up at exactly 7:30 a.m. The caller ID showed my mother's name. I let it ring. It rang again and again. By 8:00 a.m., I had 14 missed calls and a barrage of frantic text messages. The flying monkeys had officially been deployed. A flying monkey, in the context of a toxic family, is a relative who acts on behalf of the narcissist to pressure, manipulate, or guilt-trip the victim into compliance. My phone was exploding with them. Aunt Susan texted, "Harper, what on earth is going on? Your mother is having a panic attack. The wedding venue is glitching and says the deposit bounced. Call your bank right now and fix this. Do not be difficult." Uncle Gary texted, "Your sister is crying hysterically. You need to step up and handle this bank error. The family relies on you. Stop ignoring your mother." They thought it was a simple banking glitch. They thought the tough one had just forgotten to verify a transfer. They had no idea I had intentionally detonated the bomb. Then came a text from Barbara, my mother. It was not a plea. It was an order laced with pure, desperate manipulation. "Harper, this is not funny. The venue is threatening to give Brittany's date to someone else. I know you are mad about that stupid little picture thing on Saturday, but you cannot ruin your sister's entire life over a petty grudge. Be the bigger person. Fix the account right now. Vanessa from the venue is demanding an in-person meeting to clear this up. Family meeting. My house. Saturday at 2:00 p.m. Vanessa is coming. You will be there. You will write a new cashier's check, and you will apologize for the delay. Do not embarrass us." I stared at the text. She was trying to trap me. She thought that by bringing the venue manager into her living room and surrounding me with the judgmental stares of all the aunts and uncles, I would crumble under the social pressure. She thought I would be too embarrassed to expose the family secrets in front of a stranger. So I would just quietly write a new check to cover the glitch and save face. It was a brilliant, manipulative strategy. It would have worked perfectly on the old Harper. But the old Harper was dead. I replied with a single word. Fine. But I had 4 days until that Saturday meeting. And I am not a person who walks into a trap blindly. I needed to know why they were so desperate. Why take out a high-interest loan? What happened to Bradley's money? Bradley had constantly bragged about his wealthy parents and his massive savings. I used the routing numbers from the forged contract to do a little deep dive into public financial records tied to Bradley's name. Forensic accounting is 90% knowing exactly where to look for the hidden breadcrumbs. It took me 3 hours, but I found the devastating final piece of the puzzle. I found a wire transfer receipt linked to a public property tax record. Bradley's parents, an older, respectable couple living 2 states away in Arizona, had generously gifted the couple $15,000 exactly 2 months ago. The memo line on the wire transfer literally read, "For the wedding venue. Love, Mom and Dad." They had the money. They had $15,000 in cash. So where did it go? I cross-referenced Brittany's public Instagram posts with international flight data. Exactly 6 weeks ago, Brittany and Bradley took an ultra-luxury, 2-week vacation to Tulum, Mexico. They stayed in a 5-star private villa, rented a yacht, and posted endless photos about their pre-wedding honeymoon phase. The truth hit me like a freight train. They did not lose the venue money. They deliberately blew Bradley's parents' money on a luxury vacation in Tulum, just to look rich on the internet, and when the actual wedding venue bill came due, they panicked. They could not ask Bradley's parents for more money without exposing the lie. They could not afford it themselves. So they looked at me, the quiet, reliable, invisible sister, the tough one. They decided to steal $20,000 of my identity to cover up their massive, irresponsible lie. I printed the flight records. I printed the wire transfer receipt from Bradley's parents. I printed the forged contract, the IP logs showing my mother's involvement, and the billing statement for the $8,000 Rolex. I compiled every single piece of evidence into 5 identical, separate brown manila envelopes. Saturday was approaching. My mother wanted a family meeting to force me into submission. She wanted an audience. I was going to give her the greatest show of her entire life. Are you ready to see a toxic empire fall? I pulled up to my mother's house at exactly 2:00 p.m. on Saturday. I did not bring Lily. She was safe at home having a movie marathon with a trusted babysitter. I walked up the driveway holding nothing but my car keys and 5 identical brown manila envelopes tucked under my arm. I opened the front door and stepped into the living room. The atmosphere was incredibly oppressive. It felt like walking into a courtroom where the jury had already been heavily bribed. Every single flying monkey was there. Aunt Susan, Uncle Gary, and 3 older cousins were sitting on the sofas with their arms crossed, glaring at me with expressions of deep disappointment and judgment. Brittany was sitting in a velvet armchair, dabbing her perfectly dry eyes with a tissue, flawlessly playing the role of the traumatized victim. Bradley stood behind her looking nervous, but maintaining his fake posture of authority. My mother, Barbara, stood in the center of the room, and sitting on the small love seat, looking incredibly uncomfortable and deeply professional, was Vanessa, the manager from the Heritage. She had a leather portfolio in her lap. Barbara spotted me and immediately started her performance. Harper, finally, Barbara sighed loudly, shaking her head like she was dealing with a rebellious teenager. Come in, sit down. We are all here to support you through whatever emotional crisis you are currently having, but this petty behavior has to stop. You have caused Brittany a lot of unnecessary stress. I did not sit down. I stood in the exact center of the room, my posture straight, my face completely expressionless. Aunt Susan chimed in right on cue. Seriously, Harper, canceling the venue deposit just because you were a little jealous of Brittany's photoshoot? That is incredibly immature. You make plenty of money. Stop trying to ruin your sister's special day. Brittany let out a dramatic, fake sob. I just do not understand why she hates me so much, she whined, looking at Vanessa to make sure the manager registered her pain. I just wanted a beautiful wedding. Bradley stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. You need to fix this right now, Harper. Vanessa was kind enough to drive out here to accept a new certified check. You are going to write that check, apologize to my fiancé, and we are going to put this embarrassing bank glitch behind us. The trap was fully sprung. The pressure was immense. 30 years of social conditioning screamed at me to just apologize, write the check, and make the uncomfortable tension in the room go away. That is how toxic families win. They weaponize your natural desire for peace. I looked at Vanessa. She was watching me closely, her eyes darting between me and Brittany. She knew about the schizophrenia note. She was waiting to see which version of me was real. I took a slow, deep breath. I did not raise my voice. I did not yell. I spoke with the calm, measured authority of a forensic accountant presenting a fatal audit to a board of directors. There is no bank glitch, I said, my voice cutting through the thick tension in the room like a razor blade. And I am not writing a check for a single red cent. My mother stepped forward, her face flushing with sudden anger. Harper Davis, you will stop this nonsense right now. You are humiliating this family in front of a guest. You are the tough one. You are supposed to fix things. I am fixing things, I replied coldly. I am permanently fixing this family's delusion that my identity is a community bank account. I walked over to the large glass coffee table in the middle of the room. I pulled the 5 manila envelopes from under my arm. I handed one to Vanessa. I handed one to my mother. I tossed one onto the sofa for Aunt Susan and Uncle Gary to share. I threw one directly at Bradley's chest, forcing him to catch it. I kept the last one for myself. What is this? Barbara demanded, looking at the envelope like it was covered in poison. That, I said, looking directly at Brittany, whose fake tears had suddenly stopped completely, is the autopsy report of your picture-perfect moment. Open them. The room went dead silent. The only sound was thick paper tearing as 5 people opened their envelopes simultaneously. How fast can a lie unravel when the receipts are printed in high definition? I watched their faces as they pulled the thick stack of documents from the envelopes. I had highlighted the most damaging parts with a bright yellow marker so they could not miss them. Vanessa was the first to understand. She flipped straight to the forged contract, saw the IP logs, and her jaw tightened. My mother stared at the retail credit card statement for the $8,000 Rolex. She read the geolocation data, printed clearly at the bottom. Page 1, I announced to the silent room. A forged contract for a $12,000 loan signed using my stolen social security number. Page 2. A fraudulent department store credit card opened in my name for an $8,000 watch that is currently on Bradley's wrist. Page 3. The IP metadata proving the fraudulent application was submitted using the Wi-Fi network inside this very house. Mom, you literally sat at your computer and helped your daughter commit massive financial fraud. Aunt Susan gasped loudly, dropping her copy of the documents onto the table. Uncle Gary went completely pale, backing away from my mother like she was contagious. It was a misunderstanding, Barbara stammered, her hands shaking violently as she dropped the papers. Brittany said you agreed to pay for it. She said you told her to use your information because you were too busy. That is a lie, I replied instantly. And even if it were true, you do not forge a signature on a legally binding financial document. You crossed a massive legal line, Mom. Brittany was hyperventilating. The golden child mask was completely gone now, replaced by the terrified face of a criminal who had just been backed into a corner. Turn to page 4, I commanded, keeping my voice absolutely ruthless. They turned the page. It was a screenshot of the private client note Brittany had sent to the venue. For 30 years, all of you told me I was the tough one, I said, looking at the aunts and uncles who were now staring at Brittany with absolute horror. But when my sister needed to steal my money, she submitted a note to the venue claiming I suffered from severe mental breakdowns and psychotic episodes just so no one would believe me when I reported the fraud. The room erupted. Aunt Susan started screaming at Barbara. Uncle Gary looked sick to his stomach. Vanessa stood up, snapping her leather portfolio shut. This is a criminal matter, Vanessa declared loudly, silencing the room. The Heritage Country Club is officially canceling the event. You are blacklisted from all our properties. I strongly advise you to get a lawyer. She looked at me, gave a brief nod of respect, and walked right out the front door. Bradley was pacing rapidly across the room, tugging at his expensive collar. The reality of massive financial deception was sinking into his brain. He realized he was wearing an $8,000 stolen watch and was an accomplice to a federal crime. Cowards always turn on each other when the ship starts sinking. Bradley suddenly stopped pacing, pointed a shaking finger directly in Brittany's face, and yelled, I did not know. I swear to God I did not know. She told me her rich sister was paying for everything. She said the watch was a gift. She is a liar and a thief. I had nothing to do with this, Brittany shrieked, launching herself out of the chair. You coward! You knew exactly what we were doing. You begged me for that stupid watch. They were screaming at each other, tearing their relationship to shreds in the middle of the living room. It was pathetic, but I was not done. Page 5, I said over the yelling. Everyone looked at the final document. It was the wire transfer receipt showing the $15,000 from Bradley's parents, placed directly next to the flight records from their luxury vacation in Tulum. Bradley's parents gave you the money for the venue 2 months ago, I stated clearly. You blew it all on a fake Instagram honeymoon in Mexico, and when you ran out of cash, you decided to steal from me. Right as I finished the sentence, the front doorbell rang. It was a sharp, piercing sound. My mother, completely disoriented and crying, went to the door and opened it. Standing on the front porch, looking absolutely furious, were Bradley's parents. I had overnighted them a copy of the manila envelope on Thursday, and I had included an anonymous note inviting them to this exact family meeting. I told them if they wanted to know where their $15,000 really went, they needed to be here at 2:30 p.m. They had been waiting on the porch for the last 10 minutes. The front window was open. They had heard every single word of Bradley throwing the blame onto Brittany. Bradley's father walked into the living room. He did not look at Brittany. He marched straight up to his son, grabbed him by the expensive lapels of his shirt, and shoved him hard against the wall. You stole our retirement money for a vacation? His father roared, his face purple with rage. You lied to us, and you let this girl steal her sister's identity? Dad, please, listen to me, Bradley begged, actually crying now. The wedding is off. his mother said from the doorway, her voice shaking with disgust. The engagement is off. You are going to pack your things, and you are going to pay us back every single cent, or I will call the police myself. The uninvited guests had delivered the final blow. The picture-perfect moment was officially reduced to ashes. The living room was a scene of absolute devastation. Bradley was practically dragged out the front door by his furious parents, leaving his keys on the table. The engagement was dead. The wedding was canceled. Brittany was completely alone. She collapsed onto the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. The $8,000 Rolex lay abandoned on the coffee table. She was facing a massive mountain of high-interest debt, a canceled venue, and the very real threat of a federal fraud investigation. There was no Bradley to save her. There was no Instagram filter that could fix this. Aunt Susan and Uncle Gary quietly gathered their coats and slipped out the back door without saying a single word. They did not want to be anywhere near the blast radius of this toxicity. They had finally seen the golden child for what she really was. My mother, Barbara, looked around the empty, ruined room. Her entire world, her entire narrative of the perfect, successful family had just been vaporized in under 20 minutes. She looked at me, standing calmly by the table. She took a step forward, raising her hands, trying to summon that old, manipulative maternal warmth. Tears were streaming down her face. "Harper, please," Barbara whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, we can fix this. You made your point. We are so sorry. Please, just call the bank and withdraw the fraud charges. If you do not, your sister is going to be in serious legal trouble. I could face consequences. Please, you are the tough one. You have to save us." She reached out and tried to grab my arm. She tried to pull me into a hug. I took a sharp step backward. I did not let her touch me. "You are right about one thing, Mom," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "I am the tough one. But for 30 years, you manipulated me into believing that being tough meant carrying your burdens. It meant paying your debts. It meant taking the hits so you and Brittany could pretend to be perfect." I looked down at Brittany, who was crying loudly into the rug. "You pushed my 7-year-old daughter onto the concrete," I told her. "You called her trash because she got in the way of your fake, fraudulent spotlight. You tried to ruin my credit, my identity, and my sanity." I looked back at my mother. "Anyone who treats my daughter like trash has no place in my picture-perfect moment," I said clearly. "I am not withdrawing the fraud charges. I am not closing the investigation. The bank has all the evidence. What happens next is between you, Brittany, and the federal government. Do not ever contact me or my daughter again." I turned around and walked out the front door. I did not slam it. I did not run. I walked down the driveway with my head held high, the afternoon California sun warming my face. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away from that house for the last time. The weight that lifted off my chest as I merged onto the freeway was indescribable. 30 years of heavy, suffocating expectations simply vanished. I was no longer the family ATM. I was no longer the invisible packhorse. I was just Harper, Lily's mother, and I had protected my daughter like a lioness. When I got back to my apartment, Lily was sitting on the floor, intensely focused on a beautiful, colorful drawing. She looked up at me and smiled that massive, toothless grin. "Hi, Mommy," she said brightly. "You fixed the problem." I walked over, sat on the floor next to her, and hugged her tightly and fiercely. "Yes, honey," I whispered into her hair. "The problem is gone forever." The fallout played out exactly as the numbers dictated. The bank permanently closed the accounts and flagged Brittany and Barbara for fraud. They are currently buried under thousands of dollars in legal fees trying to fight the credit bureaus. Bradley moved back in with his parents in Arizona. The family group text is dead. I changed my phone number, moved to a better school district, and put all that extra energy and money straight into Lily's future. I want to say something to everyone listening to this right now. If you are designated as the tough one in your family, if you are the one they only call when they need money, a favor, or someone to blame, hear me clearly. Your strength is not a tool for them to exploit. Your strength belongs to you. You are allowed to set a boundary. You are allowed to stop paying the toll. And you are absolutely allowed to let them face the terrifying consequences of their own actions. Walking away does not make you weak. It makes you free. Now, I want to ask all of you a question. Just this morning, I received a certified letter from my mother's defense attorney. They are officially begging me to sign a sworn affidavit stating that the credit card use was a family misunderstanding so they can avoid severe criminal prosecution. They are terrified. Should I sign the paper and let them off with a warning? Or should I throw the letter in the trash and let the justice system teach them one final, devastating lesson? Let me know what you would do in the comments below. See you in the next one. This story is completely fictional and is intended solely for entertainment and educational purposes.